Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the amount or the number of women in the workforce was about 49%. That's nearly half. But of course, just like everything else that suffered severe disruption during the COVID-19 pandemic, so too did the number of women in the workforce. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, women accounted for 115,409 jobs, or 61% of the jobs that were lost in the year 2020. And that brought down the number of, or the share of women workers to 36.8. That was in the year 2020, compared to just 38.4 a year before, and close to half pre-pandemic. And so those are the numbers that we are dealing with. And right now, just on the eve of the International Women's Day 2022, whose theme is Breaking the Bias, on the show this afternoon, we talk about women at the workplace, women in business, the challenges, the successes, and what more needs to be done to break the bias. Good afternoon. My name is Yvonne Okwara-Matole. This is Business Now. Our highlights first. Women at the workplace. What challenges do they face? How do we break the bias in line with the International Women's Day theme of 2022? And on our Made in Kenya series, we focus on a mobile car wash business which has environmental impact. We would love to hear your thoughts on the same, so please do send in your feedback. The hashtag is Business Now, at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. We have tried to pick women who are in leadership positions across different spheres of Kenya's economy, and this is who our guests are on the program this afternoon. We're very pleased to be having Patricia Okello, who's the founder for Circles for Women in Business. She's not a stranger to the show, and we're happy to have her once again. Also, Stanbic, who was investment lead but is now investment principal at UNCAP. So kudos to her, feather in her cap, joining our panel this afternoon. And for the very first time on Business Now, we are extremely pleased to have Irene Wamanga, who's a People, Organization and Sustainability Director at Bamburi Cement. We'll get into that conversation in just a moment, but let's take a look at stories making headlines on the show this afternoon. East African Breweries and its flagship brand, Tusker, have kicked off a year-long campaign to celebrate 100 years of existence across East Africa. Established in 1922, EABL has transformed into the biggest manufacturing operating in the region, positively impacting millions in its value chain, where the company sources raw material, makes and sells off its products. Elsewhere, Stanbic Bank Kenya has opened a new branch and signed a memorandum of understanding with the county government of Kisumu in a bid to contribute to the growth and development of the county. This is in line with the bank's It Can Be brand promise to support and empower the communities in which they operate, and in turn drive Kenya's socio-economic growth. The opening of the new branch in Kisumu was in response to the expanding market and the dynamic customer needs. Finally, let's take you to Busia now, where it's a sigh of relief for fish traders as the neighboring Ugandan authorities agreed to work on the modalities to compensate fish traders who lost their consignment in the nation late last year. Ugandan security officers impounded at least 100 tons of fish worth 50 million shillings that was destined for the Democratic Republic of Congo, that led to protests of fish traders in Busia. All right, so you saw my guests and they are now here with us this afternoon. We're talking about breaking the bias, women in the economy, women in business, running different spheres of Kenya's economy. Ladies, it's very good to say ladies. Welcome to Business Now. Thank you so much all for making the time for us. Perhaps we begin, I think, with the newest on the show.
I guess that honor belongs to me.
Right. So talk to us, you know, at Bamburi and, you know, in manufacturing with cement. What's your perspective on the role and the space of women in your field?
No, thank you for that. I think that, you know, when I listen to you talk about the statistics around women in the workplace, I've got to be honest and say that cement is heavy manufacturing, and all around the world, the women in heavy manufacturing is even lower than the standards or the averages in other sectors. And I think that that is something that needs to be addressed. I think it needs to be recognized, it needs to be talked about, and we need to do more to change it. You know, when we look at women in STEM and women in engineering, there's just not enough representation. And our role in the business, which we're trying to do very much, is to engage, to speak to the girls at the university, to encourage them, to show them careers in our sector are possible. We are trying very hard to make sure that we are an environment that supports the careers of women, and actually is an environment that women want to join and be part of.
Yeah. Tell us about that environment for a moment. You know, it's heavy duty work, or at least that's the impression we have of it. That might be, you know, mistaken on our part. But what is that like, and how is that accommodating or challenging for women in that space?
I can tell you a little bit about my own background. I came out of banking and finance. And even for myself, when I first joined the Bamburi group, it was a culture shock. And if I think back, you know, 15 years ago to today, what are the steps that we've had to take? It's from everything. It's from making sure that our equipment considers that women are going to be using it. It's for making sure that our safety shoes and our safety helmets are women friendly or work for women. But it's also about creating the right education, the right training, the right mentorship, because I think that that's an important part about creating an environment where women can succeed. And so I'm really happy how far we've gone on that journey. You know, we have minds. You know, you can imagine what it's like for a woman to go half a day away from her workplace and not have access to things like toilets and water, and we have to do that, and we have to invest in things like that to make it an environment where women can succeed.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, and I remember an anecdote that I heard from Lady Justice Effie Awar. She's one of the pioneers in the judiciary, and she said at the time when they were getting in and there were principals, senior magistrates, and even before they became judges, there were no female toilets. You know, within the judiciary for the longest time, and they would actually have to leave the building and, you know, go across the street. And you know, they might seem like small things, but they are hugely important, you know, towards creating an environment. And I guess that's something important to talk about. What is it like? Let's talk about, you know, SMEs and business and ownership in that space. Patricia, we've had the discussion with you on the show about women, you know, in business and running that. What's it like?
Wow, in general? Well, I mean, running a business it's challenging, because I think many times we've talked about this before. We don't have examples, you know, that we can look at. And even now, if we look at the news and we're seeing what's happening to some of the women-owned businesses, women are fearful. I mean, you need a lot of courage to be able to speak out about your business and to scale it, which is a big thing we hear about all the time. How are you scaling your business? But we almost feel victimized, I think, in many ways. We already know that systemically there are challenges when it comes to access to finance as women, and these are real stories. I mean, some of the stories, when you hear them, seem unbelievable, including the fact that you do need a male backer many times for small and micro businesses. It seems unbelievable, but that is actually the truth, even with the strides that we seem to be making.
And there are some things that are unique, or challenges perhaps that are unique to women running business, like you talked about access to financing due to collateral. Has that changed in any way over the years?
Do you know what? I would love to sit here and say things have changed, but I don't think so. As late as last month, when we were graduating a cohort of female entrepreneurs at the coast, and the problems remain the same. For me, who started my business 21 years ago, it remains the same. And I feel that, and we were just talking earlier and saying that I feel that changes need to be institutionalized, not only in terms of awareness, but literally in terms of people within organizations understanding the actual problem, and possibly even matrices of success within financial institutions changing to more softer skills, like how many women did you actually train, and how many women are applied, may not have succeeded, but actually applied to get certain facilities. That might have to change. So then we'll see numbers being pushed in a different direction other than just opening of accounts and movement of money.
Right, yeah. And money. That leads me to you, Esther. I know I keep saying you have all the money. You say you have some of it.
Very little, actually. In the grand scope of
it's
things.
Probably a little bit more than perhaps what most of us have. Speak to us about your space. You've been in the venture capital space for some time. Obviously, you see both sides of it, right? So, working with women-led startups, businesses, and most of them are in tech, versus now the funding for it.
Yeah, so, I was just listening to Irene speak, and I was just thinking, it's interesting how, so their problem is to get more women into the sector. So I don't think we have the same problem. I think we have very many phenomenal women founders, female founders across the continent. In fact, there's a statistic that came out recently that said, I think 65% of all businesses founded are founded by women in Africa. So, that should be like a, yay, aha moment, right? Yeah. However, as recently as end of 2021, statistics show that only 7% of funding went to, women-led businesses, to female CEOs, and less than 1% of that funding went to female-only founding teams. So you're there, a single female founder, or your co-founder is a woman as well. So then that begs the question: what's going on as recently as 2021? Like, come on, So there are systemic changes.
And how can that be? Because that's a huge difference if you've got majority of startups founded by women, and yet the funding isn't going to the women.
It goes back to the cores and the fundamentals of how even this alternative funding was put together. So I think when Pat was talking earlier, she was talking more around traditional lending and traditional finance system, and you would have thought that we would have evolved from that. So that there's certain aspects of it that have evolved, obviously, but they were designed by men, for lack of a better way. So if you think about investment teams, it's only recently now we're seeing more women like myself who've joined investment teams. So we're able to go like, hang on, this is not how we create our selection criteria for businesses, right? This is not where we meet founders of diverse places. So there's selection issues, there's due diligence, bias, both conscious and unconscious, things that have been built into the system that need to be really just shaken out. And that's what we're trying to do at ANCAP, really. So, just thinking about what are the things we have inherited, and we just need to innovate, really, because we like to laugh at the fact that, the investment industry is out looking for innovations, but the investment industry itself is not innovating, right? So yes, so there are disparities. There's a massive gap that needs to sort of like be bridged. But I also will say that there are a lot of interventions that are happening, and what I'm excited about is seeing women taking charge of these interventions. So now we're seeing women creating funds and seeking out other women. We didn't have that before. We have gender lens tools and toolkits that are being created so that all funds can use that and adopt that. And we have global donors and funders who are demanding that these tools be adopted into these funds. So we're moving past it. There were many talk shops over the past 5 years. We talk about, businesses, women businesses are not being invested in, but what do we need to do? And just lots of talk. But in the past, I'd say past 2 years and now going forward, we're seeing a lot of change within the industry, and hopefully that sort of like, catalyzes even more capital into female founders.
And I think, what you're saying is tied into what, Patricia was talking about, institutionalizing some of these changes, because in as much as there's been a lot of focus on venture capital because it was different from the traditional banking system or lenders, because, it was supposed to be innovative, and now we hear of the challenges, but it's also great to hear about, what are some of the exciting things that are beginning to happen. Irene, perhaps you could talk about what's exciting in your space and what's changed, because yes, we're talking about lots of challenges, but there's also been quite a bit of progress as well.
Completely. I think that one of the things that we're so proud of is seeing that a lot of corporates are putting the diversity inclusion agenda as a strategic agenda. It's not just something that's being driven by one woman in her lonesomeness. It's part of our business strategy these days. And that includes far more than just recruiting women into the business. It includes recruiting women in our customer bases, recruiting women in our suppliers. You know, you can imagine we were talking with Patricia just before we came in about the fact that, you know, how many women do we have who run mining companies, who run logistics companies? And I think that the interesting thing or the exciting thing that is happening today is that we are looking for those women to partner with. We're looking for them to grow with them, to provide them whatever support we can to help them become suppliers, become partners of us in the construction, in the manufacturing, and indeed in you know, whether they choose to join us as an employee or a builder, or a home builder, or a supplier. And I think that that is really exciting at this time. The conversations are happening. You know, if I look internally within Bumburi, we had the privilege of having one of the first women plant managers in Africa, here in Kenya. You know, if you look at our leadership team, at our board, you find representation of women at all levels of the business. And that's important because not only do we set the example, but it helps the conversation continue to happen at all levels of the business.
Yeah, and you lead, you know, people, organization, and sustainability, and you're starting to see, you know, sustainability becoming a very important division of many, you know, big corporates as well, suggesting perhaps the institutionalization of the agenda. So could you speak to us a little bit about that role?
Well, I think that this is also an example of how I'm fortunate to work for an organization that invests in women and gives us opportunities. My background, actually my original background was in banking and finance, and I've been fortunate that I've had opportunities and the support to grow. So I moved into HR for very many years, and I think last year the conversations that we were having around what does our sustainability agenda look like? What does it mean? What are we passionate about? And how do we make sure that that becomes part of our business success more than just doing for the sake of doing? We recognize that this is a contributor to our long-term relevance in this market. And I had the opportunity that I was invested in, that I was given the chance to grow in this space. And I think that as much as we talk about a sustainability agenda, whether it's on topics like climate or water, biodiversity, I'm so happy that one of our key topics is on gender diversity in its fullness. And that's what I said, you know, not just in terms of making sure that we have women in the organization, but that we have women in all aspects with how we interact with the communities that we're in. And I think that is encouraging, and I think I would like to encourage other organizations to also put it as one of the ways that you ensure that you continue to be in the market for years to come.
Yeah, being deliberate about it. What's exciting for, you know, women business owners, business founders, women running businesses? Obviously, like we said, challenges, but you know, we're seeing, you know, women literally drive the economy. They're running businesses, you know, and as you've seen from your circles.
I think a big thing is a can-do attitude of female entrepreneurs, and I think that you can't buy anywhere. The entrepreneur themselves has to believe that what they're offering and bringing to market is actually meeting a need and solving a problem. And I think at a basic level, women entrepreneurs understand that. The second thing is the desire to become financially independent. Is women's relationship with money has always been an interesting conversation and topic for discussion. And seeing entrepreneurs begin to actually earn money and grow their businesses is bringing in a lot of courage and a lot of women are able to dare, they're willing to dare. And even if we're in the trenches and you know, battling very many things, I think most women would close their business as a last resort. It wouldn't be the first thing when a challenge comes their way. And that is becoming apparent in the resilience of businesses that are being built. Then there's a hunger to learn. We want to learn and to understand, okay, these are the opportunities that are available for you. How do we become successful? When we meet a VC, when we come to a bank, when we come to an organization that is talking about diversification, what do you want to see from us? How do you want us to present ourselves? And we're willing to learn and put that that into play into businesses. So women are hungry. I know in many forums, I'm sure when you sit, the one thing that comes up is always, we want mentors. But besides, I know, right? But besides mentors and the desire, and do you know what? I actually think the story of mentors is coming from a place of absolute loneliness for women entrepreneurs, and not being able to meet people like them, who are doing things, who can advance them, and that's where the real desire and the hunger comes.
And perhaps what you're saying, the urge to learn.
The urge to learn.
You want a mentor because you want to learn, their ways, what they've done, what they want to succeed. Did you want to add something?
No, I was going to say, and also that sense of belonging. To know that I'm part of a community is so important. So important, because as much as breaking the barriers is great, going with other people is even greater. So I see your point completely. I agree with it completely.
And I think something you were saying as well about women coming together and creating funds, and that's something that is unique to women. Is it? Am I making an assumption? The urge to form a community, amongst themselves and to try and get into that.
Just to add, and a sisterhood as well. And the sisterhood now is cutting across. It's not only from the women entrepreneurs. We're seeing it also in the VC funds. We're seeing funds being brought in by a female entrepreneur and female, people in the financial sector, people the same color as us. So there's a sisterhood that's beginning to forge, which I think is really something that's new. We're no longer just battling systemic, challenges. We're now also coming together as allies.
And doing something about it. That's great. I want us to take a break. When we come back, we have a lot to talk about, including where we go from here, what happens, what needs to change. We've talked about institutionalizing some of these issues, what needs to happen at our various levels across the economy, but also, in terms of policy, and what we see as the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got some fantastic ladies, and we will also talk about their journeys. To the extent that they want to share, we want to talk about how I have such high-powered women who are founders, who are leaders in their respective fields, what that is like. So if you are looking for some inspiration, this is it right here on Business Now. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.
This March,
I was born to fly.
You won a scholarship.
I promise to be true to myself.
Starting 13th March at 6 p.m. Sultana, Monday to Friday at 7:30 p.m.
The two of us know that we can't stand each other.
Vencer el desamor, every day at 8 p.m. Kali ni Kali, Monday to Friday at 5 p.m. on Citizen TV.
This is where we call Bisil Health Center. It is a level 3 hospital. It has services to do with outpatient, inpatient, and maternity.
I learned about Dr. Zetu from an advert on television. Basically, what we really needed was to improve access to our maternity services. And that is what we went for, and we applied. We received 3 beds. We received an oxygen concentrator, we received a suction machine, and a baby incubator.
Our numbers are going to go high because women are embracing that their children are going to be saved. I've always said, if you save a mother, you're saving a generation.
I want to thank Kenyans for taking on the call, and Dr. Zetu, we hope, will in a small way make a big difference.
Confidence, no worries, no leakages. Could concentrate the impossible. Everything is doable. Yeah, so fit, so right, so fit, so right, so fit, so right. Soft care, so fit, so right.
Soft Care Petal Care has a floating design that perfectly fits. It reduces 70% friction on skin, absorbs fully, and blocks leakages from both sides.
Soft care. yeah.
Ukiangalia chuma ya dosi, or section ya kawaida. Kama ni 1 by 1, ni 1 by 1.
Dosi is the definition of steel.
James ni doshi mwenyewe sasa.
Doshi Steel, chuma ya nguvu.
Well, okay, the conversation was going on. We will clue you in on what we were saying during the break, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So welcome back. This is Business Now. We're talking about breaking the bias with women across various sectors of the economy ahead of International Women's Day, which is tomorrow. And I've got some high-powered women who make decisions in the spaces in which they operate. Let me begin with you, Irene. So you talked to us about, your background in banking and then, coming into this sector. I mean, but, leading, people is quite something. So could you tell us about a little bit about how you got there, just for people who are saying, oh, it is possible. That's what, we keep saying to people. It is possible. Here they are. Could you talk to us a little bit about that journey?
I think that maybe the one part of my journey that I think has brought me to where I am is not to be afraid to take chances, to put myself forward. And I think that one of the things that women sometimes struggle with is that we want to be perfect before we say I'm ready. We want to have done the thing for 5 years. We've seen every mistake that can be made, and now we're ready to go into it. And I think that that's often a mistake that we make. I think that we should jump both feet in and say, look, I might not be 100%, but I'm definitely 90% or 80%, but I can close that gap. I've also been fortunate that I've had the support of other women. I know we talked about that briefly. I surround myself constantly with women who keep me sane, who challenge me, who tell me off when I'm being foolish, and who tell me off when I'm doubting myself. And I think that that is the one thing that, if I talk about anything, I think I would say that get yourself women who challenge you, who tell you when you're afraid that you're amazing, or that when you're afraid you can do it, and you don't have to compare yourself against anyone else, whether it's another man or another woman. I think that's been my biggest lesson. If there's anything I would tell someone else out there, and yes, I lead. I am a business leader in the organization I'm in. A larger part of that, a larger part of that does happen to be men, but I don't think that that's made a difference in terms of how I've approached my own personal leadership, and I wonder to what extent it's affected how people have viewed me as a leader. I don't know that I like to think that perhaps first I'm a leader and then I'm a woman, and I hope that's how I come across with the people I work with. Okay, yeah, important. Patricia, you're a business owner yourself, and then now you're bringing, other female business owners together. What would you say how would you define your journey to this point?
So my journey, I always say that I grapple with two biases. The first thing is my background is I have a bachelor's in fine art, and many people think I mean finance, and it is not. I am actually an artist. That's my background. So you already see people, oh, she's an artist. Yeah. And then on top of that, of course, being a woman in business. Yeah. So I always feel that I grapple with those two kind of like biases, because people already have some opinion around people in the creative space, and then on top of that, can they really run businesses, and will they deliver? They're always known to be late, they're airy-fairy, etc. But I think I am proof that we can be both, we can be creative, and we can see the role now in terms of creatives in problem solving, and we do get paid to solve problems, even in the financial sector. So I think from my background, that's the big thing for me. The second thing I would like to share is that having branched out from being what is now being called freelance, those days it wasn't freelance, you were literally on your own, and going to pitch pitched to Fortune 500 companies and companies like Bamburi to give me work in order for me to, to deliver was a big challenge. But a huge part of that was that I had big sisters ahead of me, women in senior and mid-management who took a chance on me. And that time, 20 years ago, we were competing a lot with agencies. And I wasn't an agency. I was the designer, the driver, the everything, the salesperson. And somebody took a chance on me and literally handheld me. And that's why I'll never deviate from encouraging and challenging women in those positions to literally do handhold the person. You're the person who's you're front-facing and you're dealing with, because I'm a product of that. And then the third thing is to share your story. Don't wait for perfection. I love what you said. Even do it when it's 56%. The market will fill in the gaps for you. And one of the things that I did in a personal level was I authored a book, A Candid Handbook for Women Doing Business in Kenya. And that's what really got me on the journey of Circles for Women in Business and ultimately starting this community of female entrepreneurs known as Kayana. If I hadn't done that, I would never have known that I can actually impart some level of knowledge, because there's that feeling of self-doubt and feeling that you don't know yet, you're not successful enough, you've got nothing to share. And women carry that a lot with them into the boardroom, into the marketplace. And so just being able to go beyond that, and I feel that in my own way, that's what I have done. And hopefully now with this community that we have of over 25,000 women, as a result of one woman, taking a chance.
And 25,000 women. I mean, look, I follow, what you do online, and it's amazing, the community of women that you bring together, the conversations. 25,000 women is no mean feat, who are each running their businesses and therefore impacting the community, because, it's the impact cascades downwards. So it's not just those 25,000 women, but it's their families, it's, and their dependents. So Esther, you're in venture capital. VC, like I think we were saying before the break, has its origins in hedge fund, rich white people who are now turned philanthropists and, giving their money and trying to do the greater good. But it's that type of space. There's lots of testosterone with money. How do you then get to investment principle and to sit in a position where you are making decisions that impact, by the way, not just female-led startups, but men-led startups as well?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, for anybody who's watching out there, really, is everybody's journey is unique to themselves. And why I need to say this is, sometimes I remember when I was much younger, we would sit and literally take notes like, okay, she went to this school and then she did this course in the university and then she went to this X organization. So this is the career path. One of the things that we learned later, and I'm so happy you have this platform to really show the cases, stories and things like that, is that then you understand that there's no blueprint, right? What you take is the lessons. So this is what Pat learned in her journey from fine art to, this community of 25,000 women. This is what Irene, moving from her background in finance, into managing people, So mine is the craziest story, and I'll minimize it because I have a background in mechanical engineering and quickly knew that I did not want to work in the traditional engineering space. So off the bat, tried to create a business of my own, have a startup straight from university. And that is my favorite story to tell because it's such an epic failure. Because I had a fantastic idea, technical skills, but zero business acumen, right? But learned quickly, sort of like what I needed to know, who I needed to partner with. I had some interesting partnerships, got some grant funding as well. It was interesting, but I didn't know enough to be able to build this into a successful business. And that was sort of like where I learned a big number of lessons, right? And just to roll back to your question, so you can see testosterone is something I've been used to for very many years. So that for me has never been a factor. Oh, there's so many men in this industry. That's not really a factor for me. But so it's always sort of like, understanding that my journey is evolving. So. But I knew I always wanted to work with small businesses or build small businesses or, be part of the group that's coming up with solutions to all these, what they call problems in Africa, which essentially is opportunity galore, right? So, and that's where my heart lies. And just knowing that I could always trust, my parents were, neither here nor there, like, You know?
Okay, let's see her try to figure this
yes,
one out. Right?
But you know you have a degree. But also them just also gave me the free will to also just really follow explore and really follow my heart and trust in my instincts.
Yeah.
And so I've always been in the small business space. I did a second startup which was more successful, but I had to step away as it was growing because then we had co-founder differences, and that was also a lot of key learnings in that. And then moved on into sort of like the entrepreneurship enabling ecosystem, where I was working with different impact investors and various funders to help them understand local context and help them be able to address, or rather change policies to be able to attract more capital into East Africa. And I did that for quite a number of years actually. Yeah. And it was interesting there because then I was able to support these investors in East Africa and just help them find more, investable businesses, help define scaling, help them figure out market entry and all of these things. But at the same time, I could see, you could do this better, and I want to be part of that. I wanted to stop sort of like being on this other side where we're drawing papers and how things could change, but also be part of the change. And this is how I ended up in ANCAP. Yeah. And how I selected ANCAP was, we are literally the biggest risk takers. We come in very early into businesses.
Seed stage, right?
Seed stage. Yeah. And also it was founded by a woman. So for me that was important because I felt we understand each other and there's a different dynamic into how we're going to build this fund and so the decisions we're going to make and how we're going to innovate around our target group. So it's been a journey, but it's all towards sort of like one direction.
Okay, okay. And I like that, learning from it and also telling a little bit about, our mistakes and where we fall, because I think it's important for that. People think, Irina's just been from strength to strength and Pat has started a business and it's been running for 20 years and look at her now with 25,000 women, we all want to be that. I think I've got a minute for each of you now to just conclude on where we go from here. We've talked about what didn't work. We've talked about what is exciting. What needs to happen to just keep the momentum going, to break the bias? Irene, I'll start with you.
I'll speak to my sector and perhaps to more the corporate side. I think we've got to keep our eyes on the hidden biases. And we're having the conversations about breaking the bias and changing our mindset. What we need to do is go deeper than just the metrics. Let's understand what they actually mean. So when we talk about 40% of our workforce is women, what jobs are they doing? If we talk about creating environments, where are we creating those environments? So I think we need to challenge ourselves to go beyond just the metrics, to understand the reality, to look at the qualitative rather than just the quantitative.
Absolutely, yeah. Pat?
So I'm going to build up on what Irene has said, because for me, corporates have the ability to order large quantities of items, which will drive scale when it comes to the entrepreneurs. But I want to challenge them to believe that there's another way of doing business. I think, as has already alluded to it in terms of the financial system, that women, we actually are wired different. We do business different. We are nurturers. So some of the underlying rules right now will not play. So just have the courage to change the system and to challenge the system, and we're breaking those barriers and creating a new system. And it doesn't mean that it's either one or the other. It's that the two of them can actually run together.
Absolutely. Esther, you get the final word.
Yeah, no, I think it's just for the collective investment industry to work towards creating an equitable experience for female founders in their fundraising journey. And using every tool out there that's available to us, including data and technology as well, within the industry as well. And so, and just being able to also be very intentional to really course correct, right? Let's not see this 1%, 2% funding going towards women going forward. Let's be very intentional about changing that.
Yeah, okay. Look out for the hidden biases, be intentional, and also change our way of doing business. That's a great conversation. Ladies, thank you all very much for your time this afternoon ahead of International Women's Day 2022 that is being commemorated tomorrow. That's the 8th of March, as we do every single year around the world. That's Business Now. I hope there's been some great stories for you here on women in business and women running Kenya and Africa's economy. Thanks for watching. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.